president of Manitoba. I have the honor of being the president of the Manitoba Association of Retired Teachers. And we have a very tight schedule this morning, but thanks to President Bedford, he's extended it. He's on a very short timeline, but he's extended the privilege for an extra half hour. So we have basically from 10 o'clock this morning to 11:30. This is the way that I'm going to adjudicate, I guess, the proceedings. So first and foremost, I've taken the 52 members that have registered. I've divided the list into two. I will be calling on names. The first four names I call are going to be at the start and the beginning of each of those two lists. And then I'm going to just randomly select people. So you need to know that you will have 1 minute and 1 minute only to make verbal comments. And I will actually cut you off after that 1 minute. However, we have two other methods for you to get your information to President Bedford. Number one, you can use the chat function to type in information, and that information will be given to President Bedford after the meeting. The second method, and I think is probably the most important, for people that have longer stories, longer information that are convenient either in 1 minute or in a chat, I would ask you to send an email to the following address: office@rtam.mb.ca. Every email that we receive, regardless of length, will be forwarded to President Bedford. That way, everybody, and the idea of 1 minute is we've talked about this as an executive, and we want to make sure, and I know that President Bedford feels the same way, that every single one of the 52 people that have registered get an opportunity to speak. The last thing I want to suggest to you is think about speaking in terms of jot notes rather than a story. So you only have 1 minute, and President Bedford is looking specifically for information that will guide the Manitoba Teachers Society in the first round of provincial bargaining sometime in the next year or two. But specifically on the topic and only on the topic of working conditions, situations that you have encountered as a substitute teacher that you are concerned about. Without further ado, then, I'd like to introduce President James Bedford, President of the Manitoba Teachers Society. James?
Thanks, Bill. I'm just going to do a couple of bookkeeping items, and then I'm briefly going to sort of give you a bit of the purpose behind this session. I'll begin by really expressing my thanks to the Retired Teachers Association of Manitoba. I hope that you view this in part for what it is, which is the continued cooperation between two organizations. And I want to, again, state the enormous respect that I have for RTAM and the enormous gratitude to RTAM members who are choosing to be substitutes or take term contracts, as the case may be in our schools today. The second point, and it's very much bookkeeping, if I lose video, it is simply because my daughter, who is working with pre-kindergarten students downstairs, simply sends me a text message and indicates that we're struggling with bandwidth this morning. So don't take it for anything other than that. Bit of the background. You're aware we're moving into provincial bargaining. We have extensively surveyed our members and have gotten a lot of feedback, and we're appreciative of that. When it comes to getting feedback from members who are substituting, we're a little thin on the ground on that. And in that information that we've received, we don't know whether we're speaking with somebody at the beginning of their career or someone at the end of their career. I'm of the mind that those two experiences are likely to be very, very different. So working with our TAM, we have an opportunity this morning for me to listen to experienced members who will draw upon their experience to provide some advice with respect to what they would like to see in terms of working conditions within a potential collective agreement. Looking down the list, there are some experienced bargainers on that list. And so I don't need to tell you, but I may need to remind others that what you put in an opening package is not always what you end up with when you finally reach agreement. So everything you say this morning is important, but I have to caution you that just because you view it as something very important, it doesn't mean at the end of the day, we have achieved that in our negotiations with government on a provincial agreement. However, I do value the input. And as Bill said, we've got various ways to getting input. I see about 30 participants this morning. So perhaps there's an opportunity, because I have freed my schedule right through to 11:30, that if we have additional time, that perhaps we can circle back and hear a little bit more. I will definitely leave that decision into Bill's very, very capable hands. And as well, I'll let you know that my role here this morning is to listen. It is to take information to our provincial bargaining committee, who operates entirely in camera. So I will not be in a position to report back on you in terms of details, in terms of how that messaging is heard, but I will ensure you that the message will be carried forward. We are looking forward to it. It will certainly advise us. But I also do remind you, because I know of the importance of pensions to all of you. Pensions is not something that we negotiate in a provincial agreement. So although I will acknowledge that you may have concerns, I'm really looking for those issues that you may take from your experiences as a substitute member. I'll also tell you that we have extensive, and I mean very extensive, feedback from our active membership in terms of covering the ground on virtually every other thing that you could imagine. So I'd really like you to zero in on those issues surrounding your experience as a substitute. With no further ado, and I promised Bill I'd be brief, with no further ado, I'd love to hear from you.
Okay, and the last thanks, James. The last instruction is if you do not want to make a comment when I call your name, please just say pass, and I will immediately go to the next person. First speaker I have on my list is Heather Adams. Heather? Not hearing from Heather, I'm going to move on. Second person I have on my list is Allison Curran. I hope I'm pronouncing these names correctly. Allison Curran. Cynthia Wright.
Yes, good morning. My name is Cynthia Wright, and I'm a substitute teacher in the Brandon School Division. I've been retired for 4 years, so I'm one of the seniors with experiences that James has referred to. One thing I would like to add to the working conditions concerns is the fact that many teachers do not record their extra duties in the plans. And in our climate, I think it's imperative that substitute teachers know if there's going to be recess or bus duties, and that they shouldn't be added to the substitute teachers plans unless it actually is in the teacher's duty schedule. so that substitute teachers aren't used as extra duty people just because they're in the building. I also think that teachers should be required to leave the school-specific pandemic plan because many schools differentiate with physical distancing, et cetera. Every school is different, so I think that specific plan should be available to substitute teachers. And thirdly, I think a student medical file should be accessible. And because of privacy issues, I don't mean specifics. I just mean that students under substitute teachers' care should be flagged or noted so that the substitute teacher can get help from the resource teacher or
Okay, Cynthia, time is up. I'm sorry. Please
Yeah,
finish
I only
your
have those three
comments
things.
either on chat or in an email.
No, I just have
Helga?
things. Thank you.
Helga Colomays.
Hi, Cynthia had some very valid points there. Especially with outside duty, it's very important that the teachers know in advance. The schools that I substitute in are very good at leaving their pandemic responses and medical stuff there. So it's definitely available, should be available, I agree. And other than that, the other thing is the coverage. Definitely should not be being asked to do extra coverage, especially at lunchtimes. That has happened to me, and I'm very clear with them that we fought long and hard for teachers to get duty-free lunch hours, and substitutes definitely fall under that category. And I think that's all I have to say right now. Thank you.
Great. Kathy Bailey. Okay. Diane Bowman. Dennis Kozak. Okay, Dennis is passing. Patricia Witzke. Witzke. Tom Wilkinson.
I think I'm going to pass.
Okay. Pat, go ahead.
I'll pass.
Okay, thank you. David Harkness.
Thanks, Bill. Good morning, all. Overall, I've been pretty happy with what's been going on. I've been subbing for 8 years since retiring in a place where it's hard for them to get people. And they've been treating me really well because they know there's a shortage. There's 2 no-cost items and 1 cost item that you can add to the list so the bargainers can have a little fun, James. I'll start with the no cost. Subs should be informed if they're going into a room that had a recent COVID contact or report. Often you're there because it's the teacher, but it might be a student, and that just is a workplace health and safety issue. The second no cost, if the office would inform subs as opposed to teachers informing them of fire drills and so on that will happen during the day that would disrupt their teaching. And finally, a cost benefit, no surprise here, pandemic pay benefit, sort of a hazard pay thing. Thanks for hearing me out. Talk to you folks later.
Thank you. Joy.
Bill, since I've heard this a couple of times, I'd like to respond specifically about issues of COVID. Nothing that you said so far about COVID is a surprise to me. And I can assure you, like, I'll go specifically to David's recent comments about being informed of a COVID case in a school. I heard earlier comments about being informed of specific school procedures. You are not unique in having these concerns, and our staff is working hard on these, but I have to tell you that it's a very broad issue that involves public health. It involves reporting. It involves confidentiality issues. And because these are, in my opinion, very near-term issues, I wanted to assure you we're working on them, but I have to tell you, it's extraordinarily challenging when we come to issues of case disclosure, case management, and so on. The procedural issue, I will bring that back to our TW staff and see if they can have a reminder sent out that those procedures are to be part of sub instructions. So we're working on them. Thanks, Bill. I won't do this all the time, but I did want to address those issues.
That's okay. Thank you. Not sure I'm pronouncing this name correctly. Joy Lafreniere. Not hearing from her. Ann Williams.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. My concern is with communication between MTS and substitutes. There is none. This is the first I've heard, and I've been retired for 15 years. I'm also concerned that when you do negotiate, there's no way for substitutes to be voting on to ratifying that contract. And yet in St. James, it was the substitutes' back pay that was eliminated in the last contract for 4 years. A huge injustice to substitutes. And I think showing a great disrespect for the work that we do. I don't know how MTS can begin to communicate with substitutes and provide some representation of substitutes with MTS at the local division and at the provincial division, but it needs to happen. We are paying dues. We are not seeing any form of representation. We don't even get copies of our contracts, and we don't have a medium for getting them. So I think this is a major effort that needs to happen at MTS. Thank you.
Okay, Kelly Taylor.
Well, that was very well put, Ann. Thank you. I sub at Red River School Division mainly, and the one thing that I'd like to add in here is somebody mentioned when you go in for a teacher, people talked about duties and supervisions and stuff like that. Well, a lot of times when you go in, the teacher's got a 5-period day, and one of those periods is a prep. I find myself covering lots of other teachers in those preps. Don't know if other people are having that situation or if that's a normal thing, but if I'm in for Mrs. So-and-so, I figure that's who I should be in for and not just tacked on to a coverage situation. And that's all. And sub pay, I'm just curious how that's going to work. We've got quite a range in rural divisions making what, $180 a day, and the city's at two something. How is that going to get settled? But that's just a comment. I don't know. Not expecting an answer on that. Obviously negotiations, but thank you.
Okay. Bernadine Brown.
Hi, I'm Bernadine Brown. Yes, I've been subbing in a small division as well, where it's a very small town. And I had the same issues where doing my preps or just getting added duties put on. And I've also made it very clear that when I have a prep, I am marking work. I am staying in the classroom and doing the things that I need to do to complete my day. So it's not fair to expect me to go out on some recess duty when it's really not even on the schedule. The other thing is special needs children. I need to know that they are in the classroom and what the expectations are, because I have no background information. And when we are sent in there on a temporary basis, there sometimes isn't any help. And I don't know what these children are supposed to be doing. And oftentimes there isn't a separate booklet or something for them. So they can become disruptive because there's nothing for them to do. So those are the two issues that I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Helen Mandiburn. Helen Mandiburn. Okay, got you on the screen, but you're not answering. Mary Jane McClellan, sorry.
Ms. McClellan, you're muted.
Oh, just like in the commercial, sorry about that. You know what, I just wanted to thank Anne and the other people who commented for your great observations. I think we need some meaningful professional connection between substitutes because we actually compete for jobs. And I think that, you know, really stands in our way of acting like a collective. And I think we also need more recognition in some way for our considerable experience and qualifications. There's rarely any comment or feedback from teachers, and I mean, often good relationships with teachers on a go forward basis, but almost no follow up at all from a principal or from administration about how we're doing. Also, I really object to having to compete by using a sub-alert app, which is American. And I mean, I think there should be a better way to compete, a more fair, equitable way to compete for jobs than simply having to be on your phone 24/7 and wake up in the middle of the night so that you can beat somebody else to the punch to get a job. I think that really lacks a dignity for the teachers who are trying to, you know, really help out and substitute. And those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Paul Sherwood.
Hi, I'm sort of in the middle. I've done a lot of terms, especially I've retired 4 or 5 years, a lot of terms with the French or immersion schools. So my situation is I'm sometimes an MTS member, full-fledged. Anyways, but specifically to my situation, it's really annoying when I have a term and then I gotta, the whole Blue Cross thing, I've got to join their plan, then unjoin their plan and rejoin the retired plan and then go. And so I find that a bit of an annoyance. I wish there was a way that would be simpler. Of course, I know it's not a part of the issue now, the whole TRAF, the 120-day maximum, I could keep working all year for 200 days or whatever, 180 days, they're so short of people. On a general note, I think it's a drag that the government is calling us non-essential workers and yet not giving us essential worker privileges. So the whole masks and the whole thing about that and testing and that. So, and of course, we're doing a lot of double work with the hybrid teaching, but that's a regular teacher issue as well. Thank you.
Bertha Davies or Davis. Bertha Davis.
All my concerns have been addressed already. Thank you.
Okay. Warner Epp. Debbie Hamlin. David Patsack. Sarah Raymond.
Hello. I have been substituting for 7 years in 2 city schools. And one thing I want to say is I noticed that the schools, they've been very, very appreciative of me coming in. And especially during COVID, they've been very appreciative, which is nice. One thing I like is when I go in now, this time round, no N95 masks. And that's really, I mean, I have some that no N95 masks. And the other thing is the dividers are not put up like they were before, which I would like. And that's it. Thank you.
Audrey Neufeld.
Hi, Good morning. Thank you, everyone. All my issues have been addressed already.
Gabe Mercier. Let's go with the person that's on the phone. I don't
Hello,
have a.
that would be me, I think.
Could you
Hello?
identify yourself, please?
Yes, Warren McKenna. I know James well. I was a sub for 13 years in the school division in the city. The biggest concern I have, and I'm just going to reiterate what was said, is that I think there needs to be better coordination between even the local division representatives and the subs. Tried for a number of years to put something together and ran into a brick wall every time I turned around. Don't know why the resistance is there, but there doesn't seem to be any will to work with the subs so that they can have a voice. I'm love to try and have a long discussion on that one, but my minute will be up too quickly. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to suggest that you send in an email and.
I will. Thanks.
Thank you. Barbara Linkletter. Joanne Hoyak.
Yes, it pleases me to hear that, my concerns, our concerns are certainly similar as far as the abuse of substitutes not being allowed to follow the teacher's time table and get extra duty and cover other people's classes during preps, that sort of thing. When we negotiated in Pine Creek, where I live, the standalone contract, we wanted that a sub-binder be put in every classroom that contained things like class list, seating plans, special needs kids, bathroom protocol, cell phone protocol, that sort of thing. So that information is there. We also we are looking for that sub pay be standardized at 1/200th, following the BC precedent. And we are still sitting at the sub pay until the 5th or 6th day, depending, and then retroactive, depending on what division you are in. Just to note too that I know that I am always assured by James that as soon as you substitute a day, you're a member of the society, somebody has to get that across to our local organizations, because as has been said, and I think that James need to hear this again, that they don't seem to be getting that message, and substitutes have absolutely no representation and are not allowed to on our local MTS, the executives and organizations in general. I'm done, Bill, in 1 minute. Gee, I know.
Wow, that's amazing. Thank you.
I know it is.
We'll put that up as a record.
Yeah.
Judy Smart.
All my concerns have been addressed this morning. Thank you.
Okay. Irene Schmidt. Leonard Glushka. Andre Carbonneau. Andre, we see your name, but you're muted and we don't see your face. Andre Carbonneau.
Mr. Carbonneau is attending just by phone.
Okay. Is he available to speak?
Mr. Carbonneau, if you'd like to make a comment, could you please unmute yourself?
Okay.
If you're not able to unmute, we'll take your comment in the chat.
Okay, I'm going to go back to Dennis Kozak. We're we're obviously getting a little extra time here. Dennis, you're muted. Okay, I'll come back to Dennis again. Dave Mando.
Good morning, Dave Stobie down here in Winkler. Winkler, the holy city, haha. I've been subbing for over 10 years in the local high schools, and generally they treat me well and I treat them well. Our local Garden Valley School Division has involved me. I was able to work with some people to get the number of days before you get paid scale moved from 6 to 5 in the contract, and that's been very nice. My day-to-day grief has to do with technology. One time I had to have 3 teachers visit the room to get the beeping data projector to talk to the laptop to do the half-hour lesson. It's crazy. And then attendance and all that stuff. I'm pretty good with tech, but there's always something new to learn. But I appreciate the work that you do in involving us here today. So stay warm, everybody, and go to the liquor store to get your KN95 mask.
Good idea. Thank you. Go to my screen here again. Beth Smith, did you want to make a comment?
Pass at this point. Thanks.
Bill, I believe Dennis is available.
Okay, Dennis, go ahead, please.
No, I pass.
After all that? Okay. Danielle Jaworski. Linda Johnstone, I guess. Linda Johnstone. Cindy Chabot. Okay, I've got an email from, or a chat from Andre. Oop, just disappeared. I'll bring it up for James.
I have them both.
Okay, thanks. Can you read Andre's, please?
Yes, the first part of the question is for experienced teacher with 1 or more school division service fees. As you start your career as a substitute teacher, you have to reproof yourself to the authorities, child abuse registry, and criminal check with the federal authority. We should have a better process. Substitute teachers should not be subject to those fees. Those fees should be absorbed by either the school division or the province. And every 3 years, why? In my 35 years of services, the school division authority never asked me for those requirements. And the second part of Mr. Carbonneau's question or comment is there should be one collective agreement for all substitute teachers across the province to set salary and the fees.
Okay. Again, I know that this is somebody else's computer, but it's Madison. And when you unmute yourself, could you identify yourself, please?
Hi there, good morning. Yeah, I'm using my daughter's computer. My name is Barry Hudson. So anyways, yeah, thanks for having me on. I just retired in June of 21, so I'm a newbie at this. And I spent my career 35 years at Sisler. I just wanted to say I'm subbing in 2 divisions, which is Louisville and Winnipeg. And the reason why I'm saying that is because my experiences there have been very good. And I haven't had a complaint at all that I had to share. I'm kind of siding with Paul because I agree with what he said here, because right now I'm presently back at Sisler on a term. And that seems to, everything's great there. However, my concern is the 120 days. And as was mentioned to me, when we have such a shortage of substitute teachers, And right now, our government is still leveling us at the 120 days. To me, that makes no sense. And I know Ontario has already wiped that out. And I'm just kind of wondering when they're going to be doing that for the province of Manitoba. When I was at school on Friday, there was about 10 to 12 teachers away. And there were 9 teachers that had no subs. So as we talked about here, there's all these extra teachers filling in for coverages and stuff like this. And it was a madhouse because you have to do that. So I'm just saying to yourself, we were looking now towards the end of the year in April or May, when this 120 is going to kick in. Can you imagine if this is still going on, the shortages that we're going to have? So I think that, you know, this should be taken care of ASAP. So that's my opinion. Thanks for having me. Great to see you guys.
Bill, I think I should address the 120-day issue right now because it's come up a couple of times. There's nothing that would be done in a collective agreement. The 120 days is embedded in the Teachers Pension Act. So to change it permanently requires a change in legislation. So that rests on the shoulders of our MLAs, our legislators. Last year, the 120-day rule was waived, but it was waived last year because the emergency measures legislation that was in place allowed Cabinet to make temporary adjustments to existing pieces of legislation as long as they could be justified under the Emergency Measures Act that was in place. We're no longer operating under that Emergency Measures Act. So at this point in time, for legislators to make that change, they would either have to open the legislation up and make the change on a permanent basis, or they would have to re-invoke emergency measures legislation that would then give Cabinet the authority through an order in council to make that change on a temporary basis. I'll be honest with you, we have not heard very much about that 120-day rule. You also referenced Ontario. In Ontario, it's actually 60 days, or I think it's maybe 55 days, not 120 days. So the 120 days that we have here in Manitoba is actually longer than Ontario. I can't quote specifically in other provinces. Ontario, as I understand it, and this is from a recent conversation, hasn't currently waived it. It's just one of the things that they're looking at. And I'll remind everybody, the 120-day rule doesn't stop you from working past 120 days. It just makes the requirement that you would then have to stop pension at that point, but time worked would accrue to your pensionable benefits and increase your pensionable benefits. In the long run, it's not something on the radar screen of the Manitoba Teachers Society. This year, I've spoken directly to Bill Can about it, and I would encourage you that if it is an issue, you should act through Bill and have RTAM speak to legislators on your behalf. But do know it's a far more complicated change this year than it was last year. And sorry to take so long, but I think that's an important point to make.
Okay, thanks, James. I'm just going to keep going through the list to make sure. I know we're a lot of people that are obviously not here, but I can't tell that from everybody's screen. So Michael Borowski. Richard Botchar. Kevin McKay. Jenny Mathis. Matt Mateus. Jenny Mateus. I think we're going to be able to get some people to speak again, spend their time. Karen Mosdezen, Mozbzen. Terry Wayne Nychuk. Darlene Searcy.
Good morning, everybody. I'm thrilled to be here. I wish we could do this more often. A lot of the issues that I have been touched on today, but I would just like to add a couple. I feel that we as substitutes are often treated as second-class citizens, you know. It might seem trivial, but just trying to find a key to get into a classroom or unlock a door that's, you know, some other teacher keeps shutting for you, or those kinds of things. I can't tell you the kind of anxiety not having access, free access to my classroom has caused me over the years. I'm not thrilled with the pulled preps, but I understand the reasoning behind it, and I support my colleagues and the association. But it's not a great feeling, particularly if you do have marking to do or preparation for the next lesson and so on. The technology issue is a very, very relevant issue. I don't feel we get the same kind of training that the teachers have had, particularly during remote teaching situations. My other issue is exceptional students in the classroom. I feel that we have, over the years, there's been higher and higher levels of privacy for these students. I was special ed for 20 years. As a substitute teacher, you walk into that classroom quite often, not always, not knowing who's in there, what the students' needs are, when the EAs are supposed to be there. I would like access to some of that information about the students in my classroom so that I can serve them better and perform, obviously, my job better. I am concerned about the competition among teachers. I think it's a bit of a mishmash for us substitute teachers. I'd like to see something done around that. And that's about it for me. Everyone's raised some really excellent points I wish I'd thought of, but I hope we can do this again. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Audrey Siemens.
Good morning. Again, I'd like to reiterate, this is a fabulous chance to get some ideas out there, and I really enjoy listening to all my colleagues. A couple of things I just want to highlight. I know term contracts, people have talked about them a little bit. In the fall, I was actually offered one only if I was really willing to break my 120-day contract. And when I suggested half-time, they didn't go for it, even though it was advertised as a 6-week term position, which should have not had anything to do with that. So that was kind of an interesting turn of events. The health conditions in schools vary widely. I'm in the city, basically in my high school that in Louis Riel that I retired from, as well as a couple of elementary schools. And they vary widely. Some of them had absolutely no distancing this fall whatsoever. And the janitor pointed out that they simply wiped off the floors in the summertime when they were cleaning, and all the distancing spots were gone. So that's what they kept going with. So that was an interesting thing. Masks and that kind of thing too should be readily available for substitutes and that kind of thing. In terms of student services, sometimes coverage too, you're going from classroom to classroom each hour, going to different classes and doing actual classroom things. So that's an interesting thing that sometimes happens to student services people, I think. Recess and bus duty is a huge issue, and I think that's exactly what has been raised already, as well as we have some schools that are also dual track. So when I responded to an English language subject position, I was given French immersion for the afternoon. And the actual principal said to me, it was because if they put it under French immersion as a sub, they won't get one. So being German background and not French background, I just informed them that I would be doing writing and reading for the afternoon and doing a good job of that. And I did teach them some German too, so that was all good with the students. But I think that has to be clarified in terms of that. So that's basically it. I appreciate all the comments and the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Lizom Idle? Lizom, you're muted. I can see you on my screen, Lizom. Maybe not pronouncing that right. Lisom.
Hello?
There you go.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes.
I substituted in Winnipeg for 5 years. I've spent the last 30 years up in the north. And when I came back last year, I applied to 2 school divisions to substitute and never got a call. My specialties were resource, French immersion and basic French, and business. And I worked with the substitute teachers to get our substitute teacher association going with Winnipeg #1 years ago. But I'm also looking at the fact that there are times that I don't know, because I haven't followed, whether each school division has a substitute group affiliated with MTS.
Okay, thanks, Lizom. Keep going here. David Stobe. Ed Hume. Janet Hildebrand. Marilyn Fisher. Cindy Chabot. Lucille Dodette Mitchell. Rajinder Goyal. Angie Hovardes. Okay, there's one on my screen, Pamela's iPad. I don't know who that is, so when you start speaking, if you're there, could you identify yourself, please? Pamela's iPad.
Okay, I just wrote all my concerns in a chat. Yeah, they were a little lengthy, but everything else is the same as what everybody's saying. And I'm Pam Wilkinson from the Southwest Horizon.
What's your last name, Pamela?
Wilkinson.
Thank you.
Ms. Wilkinson, I don't see anything in the chat.
Oh,
Unless-
I haven't posted it yet. You interrupted me.
Okay, my apologies.
Pamela,
It's lengthy,
why
I
don't
guess.
you, Pamela, why don't
Well-
you share verbally
Okay.
with us?
Right. I wasn't sure if I should add, because it's not, doesn't happen in the classroom. It's more about pay and cancellation. And so I was going to write that our division starts we don't have retroactive pay. We start full pay on the 6th day, I believe. And that was news to me after I'd taken a 2-week stint. It was kind of a shock. The other thing is we get paid, and I know it's might sound a little bit menial, but we get paid anywhere between the 6th and the 12th of the month. We hand in our month pay or our month hours, and then anywhere between the 6th and the 12th, our pay will come in, and support staff get paid once a month, and teachers get paid twice a month. So I think there could be something better than that. And the last thing is cancellations. I've been on a I went to Pearson, 25 minutes away, for a 2-day stint, only to be told that it was only for a half day that afternoon. So I didn't have anything to do, drove back another 25 minutes, and then back again to do the half day stint. And so my gas was double. So the cancellations I find are a little bit iffy. So anybody else have that problem? I don't know. So those were my 3. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Pamela.
Bill,
According
Dave,
to- Go ahead, Diane.
Dave Niduk and Peggy have joined the meeting as well.
Okay. Dave, did you want to make any comments?
Nope, I'm just listening.
Okay. Peggy, did you want to make any comments? Peggy Pendergast?
No, I'm just here as an observer, Bill.
Okay, doke. All right, I'm going to go back to just basically open it up to the people that are on the screen. And I'm going to start with
Bill, could I maybe take a couple of minutes, because there are some concerns that are outside the bargaining process that I really think I should address.
Okay, go ahead.
So one of the concerns, and I recognize this, is our ability to communicate, that is the society's ability to communicate with substitute members. Our ability to communicate with substitutes depends entirely on the substitutes themselves. Our fundamental communication process is done through what we call My Profile. The onus is on the member to register. We do not receive up-to-date lists of substitutes from school divisions. When we do receive lists, they are often 2, 3, 4 months out of date. It's certainly not a priority. So if you're not hearing from the society and you feel you should, and I would agree that you should, you need to be registered on My Profile. Once you're registered, we then can cross-reference with an individual employer and verify that you are in fact an active substitute. But the onus has to rest on you to do that. In terms of your membership, I will say how your membership in the society is determined. It was mentioned, yes, you work 1 day as a substitute and you are a member. But again, the onus is on you to exercise that right. You should have no predetermined ideas that because you worked for a day as a substitute, that the local association or the society will immediately know about that. It's actually unlikely, because there is no onus of responsibility on the employer to notify the local or the society within any reasonable length of time that you've been employed as a substitute. So you need to take hold of that responsibility and contact the local involved, contact the society through My Profile, and then the procedures are well in place to allow you to exercise your rights as a member, be that to vote, be that to ratify a collective agreement, in a whole range of both responsibilities and rights that will exist to you as a member. But you need to take hold of that responsibility, and I certainly encourage you to do that. Some of our locals are very good about trying to organize substitutes. Others, not so good. Why? It's not the fault of the local. I would say it's often the fault of not being able to clearly contact members who are substitutes in their locals. The one thing you have to remember for political purposes, you can only exercise your rights in one local. So just because you work in 5 different divisions and are covered under 5 different collective agreements, our bylaws only allow you to exercise political rights, that is the right to vote, in one of those locals. But you know, I think that information is important to you. I don't want to stop the conversation. This is really an excellent conversation. I can tell you that many of the things that I've heard are consistent with what we've already heard from substitutes. And again, please keep in mind, I am not here to make promises based on outcome, but I can assure you that the issues you raised about pay, about transition of pay between where you go from a daily rate to what I'll call a scale rate, that often happens at the 5, the 6, the 7-day rate. That is very much on our radar screen. The workday issues that you should be assuming, and only assuming, the workload of the individual, the member you are replacing, that is very firmly in our radar screen. You are not unique in raising that issue. The issue of benefits have come up to the individual who talked about having to move from plan to plan. Our Blue Cross plans are all set up that if you have pre-existing coverage under another plan, you should not have to give up that plan to join our MTS Blue Cross plan. However, there are 3 locals that establish their own benefit plans, and the rules for those benefit plans may be unique. And those 3 locals are the Winnipeg Teachers Association, the Seven Oaks Teachers Association, and the Thompson Teachers Association. So you may experience different rules there, but nobody in any other school division in the province should be asking you to resign if you're in the MTS retiree plan, or if you're in an RTAM sponsored plan. As long as you can show proof of coverage, you should not have to resign from that plan and join a new plan. It may be your choice to do it, but you should not be required to do it. I've heard travel mentioned. That's very much on our radar screen, specific to rural divisions. In some cases, significant distance has to be traveled. We hear that loud and clear. And should you be compensated for it? Our opinion is yes. That's something that's taken under consideration. You've said something that I very much expected you to say, and that's acknowledgement for the experience you bring to the classroom. I would say a lot of the commentary you made this morning is based on your experience as members. And I think acknowledging that experience when you come into school to sub is certainly something that I will urge the committee to give consideration to. That could be difficult to translate into a clause, but I thank you for raising that point, because I'm of the opinion it is very, very important. I've heard a number of things, and I think I've already spoken to this, but there's a number of issues raised around what I'll call teaching in a pandemic situation. Broadly speaking, those concerns are impacting every member of the organization. And I would be surprised if our provincial bargaining committee does not propose something along the lines of some pandemic response clauses. I can tell you that our colleagues in Saskatchewan, they're the only jurisdiction in the country that going into the pandemic actually had a clause reflecting pandemic. And that clause simply guaranteed 2 weeks of additional sick time should a pandemic be declared. So I think that is very much on our radar screen. I do sympathize. There's been some commentary around term contracts. That's very much on our radar screen. And I know our provincial bargaining committee, with the advice of staff, has spent a great deal of time trying to propose what I'll call solutions around the long-term term contract position. That's been an ongoing issue, as many of you are aware, for some significant period of time now, and we continue to work to try to address it. It wasn't my intent going into this to tell you what we already know, but as I've told you already, you have verified many of the things we've already heard. But again, you've also given us a few new things to think about. But I'll end this by wanting to be encouraging. Please, some of you have clearly shown that desire to remain involved as what I'll call members in the political processes of locals, particularly representing the voice of substitutes. I encourage you to take that voice on. I can tell you from personal experience as a collective bargainer and a vice president in the Louis Riel Teachers Association, we always wanted to hear from substitutes. It was a very difficult thing to organize. So, don't wait for something to happen. If it's important to you, assist in the process of making it happen. And Bill, we've got half an hour left. I'll let you decide on how best to use that time. But again, my profound thanks to all of you for taking the time. I've listened, I've heard. I will take that voice, be it reinforcement or new ideas. I'll certainly take that to collective bargaining. The one thing I should say, the issues around pay have no concern. We hear that loud and clear.
Mr. Bedford, 2 questions have come up in the chat just for clarification on your comments. One is, where is the My Profile located on the MTS website?
So it's a tab across the top of the screen. To register, though, if you're not currently registered, you require an MTS membership number. For all intents and purposes, that was the number you had as an active member. If you don't know that number, or for some reason you haven't got a number, you'll have to give the Teacher Society a phone call. We have a process at reception that we deal with expediently providing that membership number to allow for registration. The one thing that has to be remembered is, as a substitute member, re-registration is required each year because you don't have a continuing contract as an active member has. You don't have a continuing contract that carries you through to the next year. Once you go through retirement, you have to go through the process of re-registering each year, but your name doesn't change. Obviously, your membership number doesn't change. So phone the society and make the inquiry at that point.
The second comment relative to that is, if I sub one day, am I a member of MTS for the whole year?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to use the rest of the time to go across my screen and call on people to speak a second time. So first person that I have on my screen is David Harkness. David? David Harkness?
Yeah, I didn't really have anything else to say other than I think that the bargainers have a large plate in front of them, and they've got some tools to empty that plate as best they can. So far, I've been very happy, but I'm in a very specialized area. I'm just filling in for Red Seal tradespeople who are teaching in a technical and vocational environment. So I'm not really in competition with anyone, much less the young people that I retired so they would have a job. So they treat me pretty well there because we're rare as hen's teeth.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, David. Joanne Hoyak.
Yes, may I just make a comment to the cancellation concern? That when we years ago with MTS's help negotiated a standalone contract here in Pine Creek, during that time when the substitute, there was a court case, never mind. But anyway, one of the clauses that we put into the contract that still stands, I believe, in Pine Creek, is that if the day is canceled, then what happens is the substitute whose day is lost either gets called in to float or help or whatever, or gets paid for half a day regardless. So that's something maybe the bargainers could think of when we have provincial bargaining.
We're aware of that clause, Joanne.
Yeah, good.
Okay, next on my on my screen is, I'm sorry, I've forgotten the name, but it's Madison.
Oh, I didn't realize. Okay, it's Barry Hudson is my name. And by the way, hello, Dave. I haven't seen you for a long time. Hey, yeah. No, you must have been reading my mind because I didn't even realize I did this. But anyways, my question again is one of my former students is an MLA. Now, for James or for Bill, do you guys recommend that, regarding that 120, do I kind of speak with him to kind of see if they can do something for those of us who are on term or considering term, or is that not going to help at all?
Well, I'll take a shot at it, Barry. It is not something last year we heard from our local leaders that this move, waiving the 120 day, it would be of assistance to the sub-supply. And so we entered into a conversation with government about it, and there was a result. Not heard that message this year. Say, I can only go by what I've heard. This year, what I've heard is it didn't make a significant difference last year. It didn't open the floodgates of having a huge number of retired members then make that decision to substitute. Okay. And so based on that, I'm not going to do something when I'm not asked to do it, and when we don't hear that concern being raised. And I've already indicated too that the likely response you're going to receive from your former student who's an MLA is, unless the information I've been provided is wrong, it's a far more difficult thing to do this year than last year. And I would tell you, as an organization, we would have serious concerns if the Teachers Pension Act was opened up without there being the pensions task force invoked to talk in detail of what those changes are. When you open up a piece of legislation, anything in that legislation can be changed. And I will tell you that you're receiving a pension that's governed by that Teachers Pension Act.
The reason why that concerns me is, as being a first-year retiree and getting into this and seeing that and perceiving what's going to happen, and I will be over the 120 days. And you also hear those saying, well, it's probably not worth your while to touch your pension. But, I know it kicks in, they'll stop for, I guess, a month or whatever that 120 day gets there. And then they start up the month after or something like that. So I'm kind of like, I'm not sure, in that sense, and I'm not sure who could give me any recommendation. Is it that good or that bad in order to go over that?
I don't think there's anything wrong with your approaching your MLA to vent your concern. But I think James's comments are well taken, and the Manitoba Teachers Society obviously would be concerned if the Pension Act was opened up. But absolutely, there's nothing wrong with voicing your concern. I'm going to move to Helga Kolomea next. Helga?
Perfect, because I just wanted to talk. As a retired teacher in my second year of retirement, I did take a term that kept getting extended and extended, and I can address what happens when you exceed your 120 days. It's very painless. Your pension stops on your 120th day, and you contribute again to the regular pension. When your term is finished, your pension picks up immediately. So my term finished June 30th. It picked up again, went as, and then I reached my 120th day in April. Okay, so for that month, then on, I contribute to a pension. That pension that you contributed to sits there until October. In October, they look at what you contributed, decide, okay, either we're going to give you another pension, or we're going to pay you out in a lump sum and you can invest it yourself if it's not a big enough pension. And it was painless. It happened. I would say if you are not in a term, it probably isn't worth it to put your pension on hold and then just sub for the remainder of the time. But that's a decision that you have to make. But there are no penalties. There are no, like I thought, okay, is it going to affect the amount of pension that I get afterwards? No, nothing like that happens. It's a very painless process. And TRAF is very helpful when you have to do it. So it's a decision that you have to make. I say if you're in a term and you've exceeded your 120, then go for it. As long as you meet, like when you're a first year teacher, you can't take a contract in, but you're past all the rules. I'm sure you know all the rules, but in my experience, it's very painless, and the TRAF is very helpful to lead you through the process. Okay, then that's all I had to say.
Thank you.
Helga, thanks for that. You said what I really would have liked to have said, but I can't, because even though I sit on the TRAF board, I'm not the spokesperson of TRAF, but you put it eloquently and articulately, and I would encourage any member who has concerns, please contact TRAF. The staff is outstanding. They will provide you with the necessary explanation and, you know, present for you the choices to make. But thanks so much for that explanation. I deeply appreciate it.
Okay, next on my screen, I've got Audrey's iPad, and I'm not sure whether that's Audrey Neufeld or Audrey Siemens. So.
Hi, that's Audrey Siemens. Thank you. Just one thing that I know a couple of people talked about, and I would just like to talk about that a little bit more, is in terms of in classrooms, whether it's high school or elementary classrooms. I've experienced many students, first of all, in high school, particularly refusing to put the mask on. They may have it somewhere on their person, but they're not wearing one, and they won't do it for you. And the other thing is or they're eating constantly, especially in high school, and they'll just say, well, we're eating, so we don't need to put it on. And so that may last, half the class. And then also for elementary classrooms, there's a lot of special needs children that I have found that will not wear a mask. And when I've asked other people, principals, whoever about this, they've said that they don't need to wear one or it becomes a real issue. So they tell them they don't have to wear one. So I think, somewhat safety is a concern for me. I know I stopped acknowledging those schools where I was having that issue, because if administration wasn't going to follow it through, I was not going to sub in a school where the children didn't have to wear a mask. So that was just something that I was wondering about, whether other people have had that issue as well.
Okay, thanks.
Bill, I'd like to address it, if nothing more, just to say hi to Audrey. We're former colleagues. I have enormous respect for her work professionally, both as a teacher and a local leader. Audrey, yes, absolutely. There's no question. Our staff are dealing with this. The Council of School Leaders works hard with their members as well. I hope you appreciate it's an ongoing issue, and we deal with it on a case by case basis. and often we're successful. The thing that I always tell members is, if we don't know about a problem, there isn't anything we can do about the problem. And I understand your response. It's probably exactly the response that I would have, is that if a school cannot provide working conditions that are acceptable to me, I can make choices. And I understand that. I remind you that not all of our members have that ability, but our staff work very hard to try to address these issues. And I want to speak very positively of the Council of School Leaders, who also is working very hard to address these issues, but it's difficult. And I'll just leave it at that. It's tremendously difficult, but thanks for raising them.
Thanks.
Okay. Bernadine Brown, next on my screen, if you'd like to speak again. Bernadine?
Hi, yes, I'm enjoying the meeting. There is a lot of information coming out. I just did want to reiterate the fact that sometimes substitutes are treated not only by the children, but also by the staff as second-class citizens, like we can't get a job, or we used to be a teacher. I take it that personally, because I do work very hard when I come in. I treat my classrooms as they were when I was teaching. I am responsible. I do the marking, I do the duties, etc. But I know the attitude of the children often changes, where we live in a small town, so I know these kids. And when I know them, I know their parents. And yet when I see them in the classroom, they can be very rude and obnoxious. Whereas when I see them in the co-op store, hi, Mrs. Brown, how are you? Have a lovely day. Totally different. And I find that really frustrating. And I've often mentioned that to parents, saying, by the way, it just kind of surprises me that so-and-so can be so rude. And they just look at me like, I don't believe that. Well, it's true. Why would I say it if it wasn't true? So I just find the disrespect not to be very fair. When I did work very hard for 30 years, I had a wonderful job. I enjoyed my profession. And the only reason I'm doing the subbing is because they need me. They phoned me because they need me. And I was kind enough to say, yes, I'll come in, because I don't mind helping, but I don't want to be paid peanuts to be, not respected or appreciated for the work that I do. Thank you.
Bernadine, I don't want to let...
I'm just going to make a quick comment on that, just for everybody here. Josh Watt, who is the CEO of the Manitoba School Boards Association, in a telephone conversation with me last year, acknowledged that somewhere between 80 and 85% of the substitute chain, especially in rural Manitoba, is likely made up of retired teachers. We know that, but we don't have, again, the ability to get that feedback. So I appreciate the comments you've made, Bernadine. Next on my list is
Bill. I need to respond to Bernadine's comments as well. I appreciate them.
Jamie, you know what?
Bill, I'm sorry. I need to comment on Bernadine's comments. Two things. I believe in leading by example. So as a department head, I always made certain that I visited with substitutes in my department, because it was important to send a message to my colleagues that I was always supportive of them. Some of the issues that you mentioned, I'm optimistic can be addressed through increases in pay, because I think we view those we work with all too often in terms of how we compensate them. They're also addressed in issues of ensuring that the workload of a substitute is identical to the workload of the member that they address. It's unfortunate that our students seem to have adopted attitudes that are less than respectful to teachers, because I think, as a president of MTS, my belief is a member is a member is a member. So I'm sorry for your experiences. I hope that through some of those measures that we can address them. And thanks for sharing.
Paul Sherwood. Paul?
I just replied, I think, by with the chat, I think, sort of just a comment about the you're a bit what I think was it Josephine, sorry, what she said recently about, oh sorry, Bernadine, what she said about maybe the public's attitude or that, you know, so I wrote a chat about it, so thanks.
Okay, thank you. Kelly Taylor. Kelly, you're muted.
Yep, I got it. First of all, I don't find it fair that David Harkness is sitting in that setting there right there, and wish I was there. Very nice. School cancellations. I just wondering if people were talking about like an administrative problem where you got there and you got sent back, or are you talking about you're called in as a sub, or you know you're going to be subbing, and then there's a snow day or something. I'm in the rural area here, Sanford Starbuck area, and we've had a few snow days lately. And as far as I'm concerned, as far as I know, I was called in for a couple of days, and I think I'm going to get paid because it got canceled and nobody went. The school was closed, so I'm not sure. I don't have a, what do you call it, an agreement here to read and see if subs get paid if there's a snow day. But anybody else have information on that? That's all.
Okay, thanks. Sarah Raymond.
To address the idea of importance in the classroom, what I have done is I go in French immersion as well as English. And I immediately, when I introduce myself, I call myself an invité or a guest teacher. And I say, I am invited to be in the classroom. And that seems to, I mean, with the little kids, right? It seems to work. Also, that's all I want to say about that. And just thank you to Artam and James for this session. Thank you.
You're welcome. Ann Williams.
Thank you. I have one other thing I'm concerned about, and that is the way the student teachers were being used as substitutes last spring. When they were short of substitutes, they called in teachers who were in their last years of their training, were not qualified as teachers. And I found that some of them were working a lot more than I was. And I'm concerned. I understand why they did that, but I think there also has to be some oversight of what was done, and that teachers who rely on the money from substituting regularly all year are not now being displaced. And I don't know if that was the case in any other place.
Okay, thank you. Bertha Davis.
I'd just like to mention that I've been retired and I did a term and no problem with draft, but you might want to check with your accountant about your income tax situation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Audrey Neufeld.
Hi. Everything that's come up has been really, really pertinent. I just want to make the comment, and I know it isn't for everyone, but when we go into classrooms, the kids have to know that it's our choice to be there. And I feel, as Sarah had commented, when you let the kids know that you were invited and it was your choice to come, their attitudes start to change. And I guess in a very special position. I've subbed for about 13 years now in the school that I taught in. So some of the things that you are talking about with disrespect, at the beginning, I didn't have. In the middle, I didn't have, but now I know I have to express that it's more my choice and I've been invited. And then things change around. This has been a really good session and thank you.
You're welcome.
Bill, may Julian speak sometime? Can he get on the speaker's list?
Cynthia Wright.
I don't think he heard me.
Yes, hello. I just would like to make a point about the communication issue. I think it's marvelous that MTS asked for our input today in this kind of session. And in our particular association, our president, Cale Dunbar, has twice yearly meetings with substitute teachers. So perhaps you could approach your association president and see if that's a possibility. especially with Zoom now, it's easy to have 50 people on a session and be able to talk with each other about current issues and have input in changes such as collective bargaining. And I also think communication is such a huge issue. I'm currently subbing as a remote learning teacher, and that is such a learning curve that it's important to have that ongoing communication with your association, with your, like our Westman Learning, Remote Learning Consortia. It's just really key, I think, to make sure it's a back and forth. So thanks.
Okay, Dave Mando.
Oh, bah, there's a lot of Canucks owners on here, eh? Dave down here in Winkler again. I appreciate the leadership MTS given by organizing this event. I wonder about how we follow through. The old saying, you don't know what you don't know. And this brings up things. For instance, in our division, once you hit 5 days, it retroactively goes back to the first day onwards to be paid scale, eh? Another issue would be the Blue Cross one. I hope James can maybe document what he was saying there, because my wife and I have bounced out of different plans so many times. Another thing is the COLA, huge topic. I tried to track it for a while just to see how far I'm getting behind with that. I think with 120 days, apparently over 65, that doesn't apply. So I guess I'm thinking perhaps MTS will have a website for subs, and this meeting would be documented topically so people could respond and, you know, kick things back and forth. How do you guys handle it? All that sort of things. Mostly I want to encourage MTS because moving into collective bargaining, there's got to be a billion and one things to try and integrate. So good on you folks. Thanks.
Okay. Panelist iPad.
I don't have anything to add, but thanks for doing this. This has been very informative.
Okay. Andre Carbonneau. Diane Andrea is asking to read his second and seventh comment on the chat.
Oh. Okay,
While
I just
Go ahead.
have a third and a fourth.
Okay.
In occasion, parking should be provided to the substitute teacher. In certain school divisions, you are left to fend for yourself. And then the follow-up or an additional one, there should be a study to alleviate that a substitute must pay union dues to every school division that she could be employed for the current school year.
Okay, and one thing that Andre has mentioned also again is there should be, or he would recommend one provincial contract for all substitute teachers across the province, and I would certainly support that. Judy Smart.
Thank you for raising the issues, and thank you, James and Artem, for the interesting session.
Okay, we're at 1 minute before James has to go. Joanne, you asked to speak one more time?
No, Julian would like, if that's allowed.
Sure, go ahead, Jules.
I'm not liking what I'm hearing in some of these cases. First and foremost, if it's going to be a provincial contract that we're dealing with here, we're professionals. All of us are professionals. We're not second best. We're not guests. That's something that has to be dropped entirely. We are professionals. We're just in there to replace the teacher that is normally there. And I've always resented that concept of being a guest. It's like, you know, they pick somebody up off the street and that was about it. No, I'm a professional. And we should all be treated in such a manner. That's at no time ever do I want to be considered that we are not professionally enough to be deserving to be in that classroom.
Okay, so one comment. James, do you want to just finish that last comment of yours that you put on the chat?
I put a few things on the chat. I think what I'll address is the idea that yes, there will be a single provincial collective agreement as long as the government proclaims Bill 45. And Bill 45 is a piece of legislation that has been passed by the legislature. This was done last year. It's received royal assent, but it has not yet been proclaimed. And until such time as it's been proclaimed, we don't move forward with provincial bargaining. And you know, we've reminded education ministers of this, and we've been assured that it's going to happen. That one provincial agreement, that will cover working conditions for all public school teachers, whether you're under contract, whether you're under term contract, or whether you're substituting, for the entire province, with the exception of the Division Scolaire Franco-Manitobain. They will negotiate their own local agreement. They're protected through constitutional language rights. So that one agreement will be in there. What that will mean is a set pay scale for everybody province-wide, perhaps with adjustments for the North and allowances as such, but I won't get into more details about that. You know, I'll just close by saying I've heard it's been a great experience for all of you. It's been a really good experience for me. I've seen and heard from some folks that I've not seen in quite some time, and I've enjoyed that. I want to lift up again, this is one of the ways in which the society, in which RTAM can and have worked together. And Bill and I are working hard to find other ways to work together. And I have enormous respect for Bill, for the work he's done, and for the work that RTAM has done. And that's not going to change. I will tell you that there won't be a follow-up. I'm not going to report back to all of you and say, this is what the Provincial Bargaining Committee has decided to do. We have a very set process governed by our provincial bargaining protocol, where that opening package is approved within the society. But I can assure you, I'm taking the information. The bargaining committee meets this coming Thursday and Friday. I'm taking the information to them. I will provide it both in verbal and written form. But as I've already told you, many, 80, 85, 90% of the issues you've raised are already part of our radar screen, already part of our thinking. What you have done is you've simply provided the endorsement that we're definitely on the right path. When that agreement is finalized, I fully expect to be retired and a member of RTAM before we see that agreement concluded, because it's complicated, it's going to take some time, and you know, it's not going to happen quickly. But thank you so much for your input this morning. You've been heard. Please understand that you've been heard. And there's a few other things that I'll be mentioning to staff about in terms of current working conditions. And I sincerely thank you for being in our public schools this year. You know that your services are needed. I'm sorry to hear that they're not always respected to the point that I feel they ought to be respected. But I told you, my belief is you lead by example. And what I do promise you is that the next time I meet with our local presidents, I will remind them of the important work that substitutes do and the fact that they must be respected in the work that they do. So thank you for that opportunity. And as ever, Bill, it's good to see you. It's good to work with RTAM.
Thanks, James. You can go. I'm going to have a few comments. If you want to hear them, that's great. You can stay, but I know you're on a tight schedule. So thanks very much thanks for listening.
I'll just mute and type on my other computer, Bill.
Okay. So I guess one of the things that I heard today that I think I'm going to make a commitment right now. Clearly, our town needs to do a better job of trying to, I don't know, I guess, provide at least a forum or a focus for issues concerning substitute teachers so that we can perhaps better voice them to the Manitoba Teachers Society. As some of you know, one of the things that James and I have been able to do over the last year and a half is develop something that's somewhat unique in terms of the relationship between our town and the Manitoba Teachers Society. And that is we hold bi-monthly business meetings. As James is fond of saying, they're not meetings that used to be, that was once a year to go to a restaurant and have a nice meal and basically be a lot of fluff. I can tell you that I've been enormously impressed with the work that we do and the issues that we get to raise with the Manitoba Teachers Society on a bi-monthly basis. So that's number one. Number two, I guess, please make sure that each of you that are still on the screen send in emails to our office if you want to expand on anything, any points that were raised this morning, because in addition to us forwarding all that information to President Bedford, our own executive and board is going to have to start looking at this. And if any of you have any ideas about how we could better communicate with substitute teachers, I'd love to hear them. We, at the moment, one of the first things I'm thinking about is perhaps a vehicle through our website. We now have 3 different ways of communicating, and I have to tell you, I'm a bit of a Luddite on these things, so I know how our website works. I'm not on Facebook and I'm not on Twitter, but Paul Harland, our new director, who's basically in charge of the website, is a really intelligent guy that has a lot of experience with computers, and he's moving us into the area of social media. So it may be social media, a special platform for substitute teachers that are retired, that we can provide some kind of a forum. I'm going to investigate that with Paul, find out how we can do that. The other thing I'm going to tell you is that based on today, I think that whether our town is able to get the president of the Manitoba Teachers Society to do this again, we will do it again. Because I think it's important that we get clarity on the messages and some kind of consensus on what the most important messages are that we need to bring forward, and that I would say that I will always bring those forward in our bi-monthly meetings with President Bedford. Beyond that, I don't know if there's anything else that we need to say. I can see there's a couple of directors, so I'm going to just scoot to Joanne Hoyak for a minute. Joanne, do you have any final comments?
No, except only to say that I agree with all the folks who say that this is a very valuable experience and we should do it more often. Even if just to, because organizing substitutes, and James has alluded to this too, is really difficult. We couldn't make a substitute list for our division when we needed to, because the office wouldn't release it for privacy reasons. I understand that. And also because substitutes that don't only live in our rural division, but, in other divisions nearby too. So it is very difficult to organize them. So I think it has, I think it would be a really good idea, as James suggests, that it be done through our provincial organization somehow, so that we not only organize locally, but certainly provincially. And I think we need to do that certainly now that provincial bargaining has taken over, so that we can be a force to be reckoned with, and want to be respected, and that be translated into the remuneration that we are so sadly lacking.
Thanks, Joanne. And I can't stress this point enough, but in the last year and a half, every time we've raised anything to do with substitutes, with the Manitoba Teachers Society, essentially the response that is given is two, both of which I think are somewhat unsatisfactory to individual substitute teachers, especially retired substitute teachers. The first one is it's your responsibility to do the communication. I think RTAM has a role to play that we've never investigated before. So I'm going to make a commitment to start working on that immediately. I'm not sure where it's going to go and how fast, but you have my commitment to work on that. And the second thing is, I think even more important, is the idea that substitute teachers, the only way you're really going to get a voice is to join the local of your choice. You get to join one local, and then you're eligible to be part of that local association. Our experience has been that that rarely happens. And I have to tell you, in my honest opinion, I think it's a bit of a cop-out from the Manitoba Teachers Society to say that that's the best vehicle. So I'm gonna again say to you that we're gonna open up an RTAM vehicle by which substitutes can provide us some information, and we'll try and get consistency and a better form of communication with you. I'm going to go to a couple of other directors before we sign off. Dave Nyduk, any final comments? Dave, by the way, is the chair of our benefits committee.
Yeah, I think I've just been taking sort of lots of notes here, and I think you've touched upon some pretty critical issues. And just from an RTAM perspective, maybe as a group, we need to create a committee, not unlike some of the other committees that we work on, regarding substitutes and retired teachers. And that becomes a mechanism by which RTAM can start forwarding information to school divisions and to superintendents, board chairs, that kind of thing. I mean, if the reality is, as Bill has stated, and I believe it is, that the vast majority of substitutes in rural areas are retired members, and just based on what I've heard here today, it would seem like the issues are pretty universal across the system, not for every single person at every single time, but they seem to be ongoing. And I think RTAM might be able to provide some more information to the people making the decisions and the choices. So I like what I'm hearing, and I want to thank the substitutes who came and spoke today so openly about their experiences.
Okay, and I just to be clear, the one path that I know that we've not explored this with, but I think is another path, another alternative to the Manitoba Teachers Society, is I also have a pretty good relationship with Josh Watt, who's the executive director of the Manitoba School Board Association. So that's the organization that basically works with school trustees and employs actually the superintendents. So I think RTAM could look at developing relationships and sending messages on behalf of substitutes to both the Manitoba School Board Association and also to the Superintendents Association, as Dave mentioned. The only other director I still see on is Peggy Pendergast. Peggy, and Beth Smith. Peggy, have you got any comments you'd like to make in closing?
Yeah, I have a couple. First of all, thank you for being here, to all of you. And I was really impressed with the discussion about how TRAF deals with the 120 days and makes it as easy as possible for you. The second thing is, it has been said more than once that substitutes teachers within the rural area depend on retired teachers as substitutes. But I've been retired for 25 years, so I do not substitute, although I still teach, but I teach seniors. And one of the things that I'd like to say is that it was my understanding that particularly in the city in Winnipeg, we were told as retired teachers we would not be hired, and it was campaigned that we do not even bother trying to substitute because we were taking jobs from students that weren't getting the opportunity to substitute. So there's one thing that I think as over half of the retired teachers membership live within the city area, I think that's one thing RCAMP can do is to let the world know that retired teachers as substitutes are appreciated and can think about doing that. To talk about the business of not being respected. I understand that from my teaching days, how substitutes are treated in the staff room and how substitute were generally marks for students. So that's a whole long-term stereotype to deal with. And I think we should be able to help that situation. And the third thing is the encouragement to get involved with your local association. I think you need to be heard. I think anybody that is anxious to stay within the profession that they enjoyed working in can do that. I know many teachers in their 70s are still full-time teachers, and that's the whole business of the COLA issue, which our town is also trying to get some comments in about, because now we're living in retirement. I think people need to know what life in retirement is like. And just as an older adult, to let you know, it costs more as you age. If you're going to age and stay well, it's going to cost you more money, and you are probably going to live a lot longer than you ever thought when you first retired. So let the world know you're not begging for more money. You are indeed entitled to a decent wage for the service you provide. So thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Beth Smith, who is has multiple portfolios on the Our Town board. Beth is first and foremost chair of our membership and chapters committee, but she's also taken on the additional role of working on pre-retirement seminars with Pat Bouslow, and also is the head honcho relative to our KIT magazine. Beth, go ahead.
Boy, what do I say after that? I just want to say this has been very interesting this morning. I'm not a substitute, but I took a position with the St. James School Division with the Remote Learning Support Center, and I have very much enjoyed it. I don't have the concerns that substitutes would have, for sure, but I'm really glad that I came here this morning to hear this, and I understand that we will try to do some work with Bill to try to make things better for substitutes and retired teachers. So thank you, and I really appreciated all of your questions and concerns. Thanks.
Okay, and we have one other distinguished member here who has neglected to speak, but I'm going to ask Dennis Kozak if he has any closing comments. Dennis is a unique individual. He actually is the chapter president of the Calgary area members of Our Town, and even more impressive is he is the first chapter president of one of our 3 out of province chapters that is actively involved in one of our committees. Dennis serves on the Political Advocacy Committee from Calgary. Dennis? Dennis, you're muted.
Well, Bill, I have one, it was interesting listening to about the experiences of subs, but I'm hoping this isn't going to be the only issue that goes into the proposals that the MTS puts into provincial bargaining. You know, I would like to see other issues that, and Peggy referred to this, the COLA clause. I'd like us to have some say what goes into that agreement or the opening package, and the COLA clause would be one that I'd suggest.